They called him the Scarred Rogue. For 3 weeks, Corvin Ashvale wandered the territories in rags, pretending to be nothing more than a pack-less drifter with a limp and a broken spirit. He was the Obsidian King, ruler of the 7 realms, the most powerful alpha to walk the earth in 1,000 years. But no one knew. That was the point. He had come to find a mate, not one who loved his crown, but one who could love the man beneath it. So he stripped away the throne, the army, the fear his name commanded, and became no one. Every Omega he met saw the dirt on his face and turned away. They smelled weakness and sneered. They wanted power, not a limping rogue who couldn't meet their eyes. Every Omega except one. Ren Holloway had nothing. No status, no wealth, no wolf of her own. But she had something far rarer. She had a heart. And that heart was about to change the fate of an empire. The Silverpine Valley sat nestled between 2 mountain ranges, perpetually shrouded in mist. It was a place where the old ways still ruled, where bloodlines determined worth, and an Omega without a powerful mate was barely considered alive. Ren Holloway knew her place in this hierarchy. It was at the very bottom. She was 20 years old, an orphan who had been taken in by the pack healer, Old Marina, when she was just 6. Her parents had died in a border skirmish, or so she'd been told. No one cared enough to give her the full story. She was just another mouth to feed, another pair of hands to grind herbs and wash bandages. Ren had never shifted. Her wolf was silent, dormant, a flicker so faint that most wolves couldn't even sense it. In a world where your wolf defined your rank, having none made you invisible. Or worse, a target. Ren, where are those poultices? Marina's sharp voice cut through the morning fog. Ren hurried across the muddy courtyard of the healer's hut, her threadbare shoes squelching with each step. Her dress was patched in 4 places, the color long faded from forest green to a murky gray. "Coming!" she called, clutching the basket of freshly wrapped herbs against her chest. The healer's hut sat at the edge of the pack village, far from the grand stone houses where the Beta families lived, and even farther from the Alpha's manor that loomed on the hill like a sleeping beast. Ren had only been inside the manor once, when she was 12, to deliver medicine for the Alpha's son. She still remembered the cold marble floors, the chandeliers dripping with crystals, and the way the servants had looked at her like she was tracking mud into a temple. She never went back. Today, the village was buzzing with unusual energy. Colored banners hung from the lampposts. Vendors were setting up stalls in the central square. The air smelled of roasting meat and anticipation. The choosing festival had begun. Once every 5 years, unmated wolves from across the 7 realms gathered in host territories to find their fated mates. It was a celebration of destiny, a sacred tradition blessed by the moon goddess herself. For the elite, it was a pageant of silk gowns and political alliances. For Ren, it was 3 days of extra work and dodging insults. "Did you hear?" A voice dripping with false sweetness floated from across the square. "They say the Obsidian King himself might attend this year. Can you imagine? The king, here in Silverpine." Ren didn't need to look to know who was speaking. Seraphina Crest, daughter of the pack's head Beta, held court near the fountain, surrounded by her usual entourage of wealthy Omegas. Seraphina was stunning. Mahogany hair that fell in perfect waves, amber eyes lined with gold powder, and a figure draped in a crimson dress that cost more than Ren would earn in a decade. She was everything Ren was not. Powerful, beautiful, and desired. "I've been preparing for months," Seraphina continued, examining her manicured claws. "When the king arrives, I'll be the first Omega he sees. And when he smells my lineage, he'll forget every other woman exists." Her friends giggled, casting glances toward Ren, who was trying to slip past unnoticed. "Oh, look." Seraphina's voice sharpened. "The little ghost is haunting the square again. Tell me, Ren, are you here for the choosing? Planning to find a mate?" Ren kept her head down, walking faster. "Don't be cruel, Syrah." Another Omega, Opaline March, said with mock sympathy. She doesn't even have a wolf. What alpha would want a broken vessel? She'd be better off mating with the livestock. Laughter erupted from the group. Ren's cheeks burned, but she didn't respond. Words were weapons she couldn't afford to wield. One wrong look at Abeda's daughter and she'd be thrown out of the pack entirely. She reached the edge of the square when Seraphina's voice rang out one last time. "Stay away from the festival grounds, Ghost. The king is coming, and we don't want him thinking Silverpine keeps defective strays." Ren's hands trembled around her basket. She didn't belong here. She knew that. But somewhere deep inside, in a place she barely acknowledged, a tiny ember of hope still burned. Maybe, just maybe, the moon goddess hadn't forgotten her. But hope was dangerous in Silverpine Valley, and Ren was about to discover just how dangerous. The forest behind the healer's hut was Ren's sanctuary. When the whispers became too loud and the stares too sharp, she would slip between the ancient pines and lose herself among the moss-covered stones and trickling streams. The wolves of Silverpine rarely ventured this deep. They considered it beneath them, a wild place with no status to offer. That was precisely why Ren loved it. She was gathering moon petal blossoms near the creek when she heard it. A low groan, almost swallowed by the wind. Ren froze, her fingers still wrapped around a delicate stem. The sound came again, weaker this time, somewhere to her left. She should have run. Every instinct told her that unknown sounds in the deep woods meant danger. Rogues, ferals, creatures that didn't answer to any pack. But something in that groan tugged at her chest, a thread of pain that resonated with her own. She followed it. Behind a fallen oak, half buried in dead leaves, lay a man. He was filthy. His clothes were torn, his dark hair matted with mud and what looked like dried blood. A jagged scar ran down the left side of his face, disappearing beneath his jaw. His right leg was bent at an awkward angle, and his breathing was shallow, labored. A rogue. Packless. Worthless. Ren's logical mind screamed at her to leave. Helping a rogue was forbidden. If anyone found out, she would be punished. Or worse, cast out to become a rogue herself. But then he opened his eyes. They were the color of a winter storm. Gray with flecks of silver, filled with pain, but also something else. Surprise. As if he hadn't expected anyone to find him, as if he hadn't expected anyone to care. "Please," he rasped, his voice barely a whisper. "Water." Ren's hands moved before her mind could stop them. She pulled the water skin from her basket and knelt beside him, lifting his head gently and pressing the opening to his cracked lips. He drank desperately, his throat working, his eyes never leaving her face. "You're hurt," Ren said softly, assessing the wound on his leg. It wasn't broken, but something had slashed deep into the muscle. Infection was already setting in, the skin around the gash an angry red. "This needs treatment. I can help, but I need to bring supplies. Can you stay here until nightfall?" The man stared at her, his brow furrowing. "Why?" he asked, his voice hoarse with disbelief. "You don't know me. I'm a rogue. I'm nothing." Ren felt something twist in her chest. "No one is nothing," she said quietly. "Stay hidden. I'll come back." She rose to leave, but his hand caught her wrist. Not roughly, but with a desperation that made her pause. "What's your name?" he asked. She hesitated. Names had power, but something in his storm-gray eyes made her answer. "Ren." He held her gaze for a long moment. "Ren," he repeated, as if committing it to memory. "I won't forget this." She didn't know it then, but those words were a promise, and the Obsidian King never broke his promises. Ren returned at dusk, her heart hammering against her ribs. She had stolen supplies from Marina's stores, antiseptic salve, clean bandages, a vial of pain-numbing tincture. If the old healer discovered the theft, Ren would lose everything. Her place in the hut, her meager meals, the only life she had ever known. But she couldn't abandon him. The rogue was where she had left him, though he had dragged himself upright against the fallen oak. His jaw was clenched tight, his face pale beneath the grime, but his storm gray eyes tracked her approach with an alertness that surprised her. "You came back?" he said. Not a question, a statement laced with wonder. "I said I would." Ren knelt beside him, unpacking her supplies. "This will sting." She worked in silence, cleaning the wound with practiced hands. He didn't flinch, didn't make a sound, though she knew the antiseptic burned like fire. Most wolves would have growled or snapped. He simply watched her, studying her face as if she were a puzzle he couldn't solve. "The others in your pack," he said finally. "Do they know you're here?" "No." Ren wrapped the bandage tight. "And they can't. Helping a rogue is forbidden. Then why risk it?" She paused, her fingers resting on the clean white linen. "Because I know what it feels like," she whispered, "to be alone. To have everyone look through you like you don't exist." Something flickered in his eyes, a crack in the mask he wore. "You're not like them," he murmured. "No," Ren agreed softly. "I'm not." A distant howl echoed through the trees. The festival's opening ceremony was beginning. Ren gathered her things quickly. "I have to go. Stay hidden tomorrow. The woods will be full of patrols during the choosing." She turned to leave, but his voice stopped her. "Ren." She looked back. "Thank you," he said, the words rough, almost unfamiliar on his tongue, as if he hadn't spoken them in a very long time. She nodded once and disappeared into the shadows. Behind her, Corvin Ashvale, the Obsidian King, ruler of the Seven Realms, watched her go. And for the first time in years, he felt something stir in his chest. Something dangerous. The Choosing Festival transformed Silverpine Valley into a carnival of excess. Lanterns hung from every tree, casting golden light across the crowded square. Musicians played on raised platforms while vendors hawked everything from honeyed wine to enchanted trinkets. Wolves from dozens of packs mingled in their finest clothes, scenting the air for the spark of a fated bond. Ren observed it all from the edges, invisible as always. She had spent the morning grinding herbs and boiling poultices, but Marina had dismissed her early with a wave of her gnarled hand. "Go watch the spectacle," the old healer had muttered. "Even ghosts deserve a glimpse of the moon." So Ren watched. She watched Seraphina Crest glide through the crowd like a queen, her crimson gown replaced by one of shimmering gold that caught the lantern light. She watched the alphas turn their heads, their nostrils flaring, and their eyes hungry. She watched and felt the familiar ache of not belonging. Then she saw him, the rogue. He had cleaned himself up, somewhat. His clothes were still worn, his hair still unkempt, but the blood and mud were gone. He walked with a pronounced limp, leaning on a makeshift crutch, his scarred face drawing whispers and pointed fingers. What was he doing here? Ren's pulse spiked. This was madness. If the pack guards identified him as Pack-less, they would drag him to the cells. Or worse. She moved to intercept him, but Seraphina got there first. Well. Seraphina's voice cut through the noise, sharp as a blade. "What do we have here? A rogue at the choosing?" The crowd parted, creating a circle around the confrontation. Ren froze at the edge, unable to move. Corvin, though Ren didn't know his true name, stood calmly, his weight balanced on his good leg. He didn't cower. He didn't beg. He simply looked at Seraphina with those unreadable storm-gray eyes. "I came to find a mate," he said quietly, "like everyone else." Seraphina laughed, a high, cruel sound that invited the crowd to join her mockery. "A mate? You?" She circled him slowly, wrinkling her nose. "You smell like wet dog and desperation. What pack would claim you? What Omega would lower herself to bond with a crippled, scarred, pack-less mutt?" "Sarah, don't waste your time," Opaline called from the crowd. "He's not worth the breath." But Seraphina was enjoying herself. She reached out and flicked his torn collar with her manicured claws. "Let me make this clear, rogue. No Omega here will touch you. You have no name, no lineage, and no power. You are nothing." She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper. The moon goddess herself has rejected you. Take your limp and crawl back to whatever hole you came from. A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. Other Omegas nodded, sneering. Alphas crossed their arms, dismissing him with cold eyes. Corvin's expression didn't change, but Ren saw it. A flicker of something deep beneath the surface. Not hurt. Something older. Something patient. He turned away from Seraphina without a word and began to limp toward the edge of the square. The crowd parted like he carried disease. Ren's feet moved before her mind could stop them. Wait. Her voice was small, but in the sudden silence, it carried. Every head turned. Seraphina's eyes widened, then narrowed into slits. Ren stepped out of the shadows, her patched dress a stark contrast to the glittering gowns around her. Her cheeks burned under the weight of 500 stares, but she forced herself forward until she stood beside the rogue. You shouldn't be alone, she said softly, her eyes meeting his. Not tonight. The silence was suffocating. Then Seraphina's laughter shattered it. Oh, this is precious. The ghost and the mutt. Two broken things finding each other. She clutched her stomach, tears of mirth glistening in her eyes. Go ahead, Ren. Claim him. You deserve each other. A wolf less freak and a pack less cripple. What a legacy you'll build. The crowd erupted in laughter. Ren's hands trembled, but she didn't move. She stood beside him, her chin raised, her heart pounding so loud she was sure everyone could hear it. Corvin looked at her. The mask cracked again, just for a moment, revealing something raw beneath. You don't have to do this, he murmured, low enough that only she could hear. Walk away. Save yourself the humiliation. No, Ren whispered back. I don't abandon people. Something shifted in his gaze. The storm clouds parted, and beneath them, she glimpsed fire. Remember this moment, he said, his voice strange, almost prophetic. Remember who stood with you, and who stood against you. Before Ren could ask what he meant, a trumpet blared from the Alpha's manor on the hill. The crowd turned. The Alpha is summoning everyone to the Great Hall, someone shouted. There's an announcement about the king's arrival. The festival-goers surged toward the manor, dragging their attention away from the ghost and the mutt. But Ren saw Corvin's eyes lift toward the manor, and for the briefest second, a smile, cold, knowing, dangerous, crossed his scarred face, and a chill ran down her spine. The great hall of Silverpine Manor blazed with candlelight. Ren had never seen so many powerful wolves in one place. Alphas from 6 different territories stood in clusters, their auras pressing against each other like tectonic plates. Betas lined the walls, tense and watchful. And at the center of it all, on a raised dais, stood Alpha Rendrick Vane, ruler of Silverpine, his silver hair slicked back and his cold blue eyes surveying his domain. Ren slipped inside through a servant's entrance, pressing herself against the back wall. She shouldn't be here. Omegas without status weren't permitted at formal gatherings, but something compelled her to follow, an invisible thread tugging at her chest. She scanned the crowd for the rogue, but couldn't find him. Honored guests, Alpha Rendrick's voice boomed across the hall. I have received word that His Majesty, the Obsidian King, will grace our territory tomorrow at dawn. This is a tremendous honor for Silverpine. The king has chosen our choosing festival to seek his fated mate. A ripple of excitement surged through the crowd. Omegas straightened their gowns, touched their hair, and exchanged competitive glances. Seraphina stood near the front, practically glowing with anticipation. I knew it, she whispered to Opaline. He's coming for me. I can feel it. The king has ruled alone for 8 years, Rendrick continued. He has rejected every Omega presented to him, but the prophecy of the Moonseer states that his true mate walks among us, an Omega whose heart is pure, whose loyalty is unshakable, whose worth is not measured in gold or bloodline. Ren felt a strange prickle at the back of her neck. Tomorrow, Rendrick declared, every unmated Omega will be presented to His Majesty. Prepare yourselves. This is the opportunity of a lifetime. The hall erupted in excited chatter. But Ren wasn't listening anymore. She was looking at the balcony above the dais, shrouded in shadow. A private alcove accessible only through servant passages that few knew existed. Someone was standing there. A figure in dark clothes, leaning against the railing, watching the proceedings with an air of detached amusement. The candlelight didn't reach his face, but Ren could feel his gaze. It was locked on her. Her breath caught. The thread in her chest pulled tighter, almost painful. Then the figure stepped back and vanished into the darkness. Ren's heart was racing. She didn't understand what was happening, but every instinct screamed that something monumental was about to unfold. "Ren?" She jumped. Old Marina had appeared beside her, her weathered face creased with concern. "What are you doing here, child? This is no place for you." I was just... Come." Mirena took her arm, steering her toward the exit. "Whatever you think you saw, forget it. The games of kings and alphas are not for the likes of us." But as Ren was led away, she looked back one last time. The balcony was empty. Yet the feeling remained. The sensation of being seen, truly seen, for the first time in her life. And somewhere in the shadows, Corvin Ashvale watched the girl with the pure heart disappear through the servant's door. Tomorrow the mask would fall. Tomorrow she would learn who had been kneeling in the dirt before her. And the wolves who had laughed would learn what it meant to mock a king. Dawn broke over Silverpine Valley like a blade of gold. The entire pack had gathered in the central square, dressed in their finest. A ceremonial carpet of deep purple had been rolled from the main gate to a raised platform where Alpha Rendrick stood, flanked by his betas. Every unmated Omega was arranged in a crescent formation, their faces painted, their gowns immaculate. Seraphina Crest stood at the center, radiant in a dress of woven silver threads that caught the morning light. She had barely slept, spending the night perfecting every detail. This was her moment, her destiny. Ren watched from behind the healer's stall at the edge of the square. Mirena had put her to work preparing smelling salts in case any Omega fainted from excitement. It was a convenient excuse to witness history from the shadows. But Ren's eyes kept drifting to the forest edge, searching for a limping figure that never appeared. Where was he? Had he fled in the night? Had the guards found him? A horn sounded, 3 long blasts that silenced the crowd. "His Majesty approaches," a herald cried. The main gate swung open. A column of riders entered first, warriors in black armor astride massive war horses, their faces hidden behind obsidian visors. They moved with terrifying precision, forming 2 perfect lines that created a corridor through the square. Then came the carriage. It was unlike anything Ren had ever seen, forged from dark metal that seemed to absorb light, pulled by 4 horses whose coats shimmered like liquid shadow. The Ashvale crest blazed on the door. A crown wrapped in thorns, pierced by a single bolt of lightning. The carriage stopped. The crowd held its breath. A footman opened the door, and the Obsidian King stepped out. Ren's heart stopped. He was tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a coat of black velvet trimmed with silver. His dark hair was swept back from a face that was harshly beautiful, sharp cheekbones, a strong jaw, lips set in a line of cold authority, and a jagged scar running down the left side of his face. No. Ren's knees buckled. She grabbed the edge of the stall to keep from collapsing. It was him. The rogue. The wounded man she had found in the forest. The packless drifter she had bandaged with stolen supplies. The scarred face that had looked at her with wonder when she offered him water. Corvin Ashvale, the Obsidian King, walked down the ceremonial carpet with the easy grace of a predator. His storm-gray eyes swept over the assembled Omegas, cold, assessing, utterly indifferent. Alpha Rendrick dropped to one knee. "Your Majesty, Silverpine is honored beyond measure. Rise." Corvin's voice was deeper than Ren remembered, resonant with command. "I did not come for pleasantries." He stopped before the crescent of Omegas. Seraphina stepped forward, her smile dazzling, her curtsy perfect. "Your Majesty," she purred. I am Seraphina Crest, daughter of head Beta Aldrich Crest. I have prepared my entire life for this moment. It would be my greatest honor to— I know who you are. Corvin's voice cut through her rehearsed speech like a knife. You are the Omega who called me a pack less mutt. His eyes were winter frost. You told me the moon goddess herself had rejected me. You told me to crawl back to whatever hole I came from. The color drained from Seraphina's face. I didn't— Your Majesty, I didn't know— You didn't know I was king. Corvin stepped closer and Seraphina stumbled backward. Tell me, would you have spoken differently if you had? Seraphina's mouth opened and closed, no sound emerging. That is the answer I expected. Corvin turned away from her, addressing the crowd. I came to this territory in disguise to find a mate worthy of the throne. I walked among you as a rogue, a nobody, a wounded creature in need of help. His gaze swept the assembly. Do you know how many of you offered aid? How many showed kindness to a stranger with nothing to give in return? Silence. 1. Corvin turned. His eyes found Ren. The crowd parted, every head swiveling to stare at the small figure in the patched dress clutching a basket of smelling salts. Her, Corvin said, extending his hand toward her. She found me bleeding in the forest. She risked punishment to bring me medicine. She stood beside me when every Omega in this square laughed at my scars. Ren couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Come here, Ren. It wasn't a request. It was a command wrapped in velvet. Her feet moved on their own. The crowd parted before her like water. She felt their stares, shock, disbelief, hatred. But none of it mattered. She stopped before him. Up close, he was overwhelming. His presence pressed against her like a physical force. And beneath it, she felt that thread again. The invisible bond that had pulled her to him in the forest. You asked me why I helped you, Ren whispered, her voice shaking. You said you were nothing? I remember. I told you no one is nothing. Corvin's expression softened. Just a fraction. Just enough for her to see the man beneath the crown. And I told you I wouldn't forget. He took her hand. The touch sent electricity racing up her arm. I, Corvin Ashvale, King of the Seven Realms, claim this woman as my chosen mate. His voice rang across the silent square. Any who challenge this claim will answer to me. Seraphina let out a strangled sob, but Ren barely heard it. Because Corvin was looking at her like she was the only star in an empty sky. And for the first time in her life, she didn't feel invisible. The journey to the Obsidian Citadel took 3 days. Ren spent most of it in a daze, watching the landscape transform from the misty valleys of Silverpine to the jagged peaks of the Thornback Mountains. The citadel itself was carved directly into the mountainside, a fortress of black stone and iron spires that seemed to pierce the clouds. It was terrifying. It was magnificent. It was her new home. Corvin had been attentive but distant during the journey, handling matters of state with a stream of messengers and advisors who appeared at every rest stop. He checked on her frequently, ensuring her comfort. But there was a wall between them now. The wall of his station. Ren understood. In the forest, he had been a wounded man. Here, he was a king. But on the 3rd night, after the carriage had passed through the citadel's iron gates, and she had been installed in chambers larger than Mirena's entire hut, he came to her. May I enter? Ren nearly knocked over a vase. The King of the Seven Realms was asking permission to enter a room in his own castle. Of course, Your Majesty. Corvin. He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. When we are alone, I am Corvin, the man you saved. Not the title. Ren nodded, her throat tight. He crossed to the window, looking out at the moonlit mountains. The firelight cast dancing shadows across his scarred face. You have questions, he said. Ask them. Where do I begin? Ren thought. She settled on the most pressing one. Why me? You're a king. You could have any Omega in the Seven Realms. Powerful, beautiful, from noble bloodlines. Why choose a wolf-less orphan who scrubs bandages for a living? Corvin turned to face her. Because I have spent 8 years meeting those Omegas. They smile and curtsy and tell me what they think I want to hear. They see the crown, the power, the alliance my mate would bring to their family. His jaw tightened. Not one of them ever saw me. He walked toward her slowly, stopping an arm's length away. In that forest, you looked at a scarred, filthy rogue with nothing to offer, and you saw a person worth saving. Do you understand how rare that is? How valuable? Ren's eyes stung. I just did what anyone should do. But no one else did. His voice was rough. That is why you, Ren Holloway, that is why it could only ever be you. The thread between them hummed, warm and golden. But Ren had more questions. The Moonseer's prophecy, she said. Alpha Rendrick mentioned it. An Omega whose worth is not measured in gold or bloodline. Was that about me? Corvin's expression shifted. Something flickered in his eyes that she couldn't read. There is more to the prophecy than Rendrick knows. He moved to a chest near the hearth and withdrew an object wrapped in black silk. This was found in the wreckage of a border village 20 years ago. The village was called Hollow's End. Ren's breath caught. Hollow's End. The village where she was born. The village that was destroyed when she was an infant. Corvin unwrapped the silk, revealing a delicate pendant, a crescent moon cradling a single white stone that seemed to glow with inner light. This was around your neck when the healers found you, Corvin said softly. The only survivor. An infant girl, silent, barely breathing, clutching this pendant so tightly they had to pry it from her fingers. Ren stared at the pendant. Memories stirred. Not real memories, but impressions. Warmth. A woman's voice singing. The smell of lavender. What does it mean? This pendant bears the crest of the Lunaris bloodline. Corvin's voice was grave. The Lunaris wolves were the moon goddess's chosen, her priestesses, her voice on earth. They were hunted to extinction 3 centuries ago by a faction called the Umbral Covenant. Wolves who believed that such power should belong to kings, not priestesses. He placed the pendant in her palm. The stone pulsed warm against her skin. The prophecy doesn't just speak of an Omega with a pure heart, Ren. It speaks of the last daughter of Lunaris, a wolf whose power has been sleeping, waiting for the bond that would awaken it. Ren shook her head, backing away. That's impossible. I don't have a wolf. I've never shifted. I'm broken. You are not broken. Corvin closed the distance between them, his hands cupping her face. You were sealed. Your mother placed a powerful seal on your wolf to hide you from the Covenant. But the seal alone wasn't enough. The old Alpha of Silverpine, Rendrick's predecessor, knew what you were. He ordered Wolf's Bane added to your food in small doses, reinforcing the seal, keeping your wolf in a coma. That's why you were weak. That's why you never shifted. Ren's mind reeled. Marina, she breathed. She knew? All this time? Corvin nodded slowly. Marina was a healer in Hollow's End. She was the one who smuggled you out during the attack, kept you hidden among human villages for years. When she finally brought you to Silverpine, she posed as a stranger taking in an orphan. She has protected your secret your entire life. Tears streamed down Ren's face. Everything she thought she knew was unraveling. The seal is weakening now, Corvin continued gently. The wolf's bane has been flushed from your system since you left Silverpine. I felt your wolf stir the moment our bond sparked in that forest. How do you know all this? Because the Moonseer told me? Corvin's thumbs brushed her cheekbones. 8 years ago, she came to me with a vision. She said my true mate would be hidden in plain sight. An Omega the world had discarded, whose power slept beneath a lifetime of pain. She said I would find her only if I stripped away my crown and walked among my people as a beggar. So you've been searching for 8 years? I've been searching for you. His forehead touched hers. And now that I've found you, I will burn the world before I let anyone take you from me. The words should have frightened her. Instead, they made her feel something she had never felt before. Safe. But the moment shattered. A knock thundered against the door. Your Majesty. A guard's voice, urgent. Forgive the intrusion, but there's been a breach. Someone has infiltrated the Eastern Tower. They're demanding an audience. Corvin pulled back, his expression hardening into the mask of a king. Who? She claims to be an emissary from Silverpine, Your Majesty. She says she has evidence that the Omega you claimed is a fraud and a traitor. Ren's blood turned to ice. Corvin's eyes met hers, steady, reassuring. Stay here, he commanded. Do not open this door for anyone but me. He strode out, and the door locked behind him. Ren stood alone in the firelight, clutching the pendant of her ancestors. The wolves of Silverpine weren't finished with her. And somewhere in the darkness of the citadel, Seraphina Crest was sharpening her claws. The throne room of the Obsidian Citadel was a cavern of black marble and iron chandeliers. Ren had been summoned at dawn, escorted by 2 silent guards who refused to meet her eyes. She wore a gown of deep blue velvet, a gift from Corvin's household staff, but she felt like an imposter wrapped in silk. The room was packed. Nobles from across the 7 realms lined the walls, their faces hungry for scandal. At the far end, Corvin sat upon the obsidian throne, his expression unreadable. And standing before him, dressed in traveling clothes but radiating triumph, was Seraphina Crest. Ah, there she is. Seraphina's smile was poison dipped in honey. The little fraud herself. Ren's escorts brought her to the center of the room, then stepped back, leaving her exposed. You summoned me, Your Majesty. Ren kept her voice steady, though her knees trembled. Corvin's gaze was cool, distant. The warmth from last night had vanished completely. Seraphina Crest has brought serious accusations against you, he said, his tone formal. She claims you orchestrated our meeting in the forest, that you knew my identity and manipulated events to ensnare me. Ren's stomach dropped. That's a lie. Is it? Seraphina stepped forward, producing a folded letter. I have here a statement from old Marina, the healer of Silverpine. She confesses that she told Ren of Your Majesty's disguised arrival days before the festival. She admits that Ren stole supplies specifically to stage a rescue. The crowd murmured. Ren felt the floor tilt beneath her. Marina would never. She signed it herself. Seraphina handed the letter to a court official, who examined the seal and nodded. The evidence is clear, Your Majesty. This Omega deceived you. She is no destined mate. She is a common schemer who saw an opportunity and seized it. Ren looked at Corvin. His face was stone. What do you have to say, Ren Holloway? His voice held no warmth, no recognition of the man who had touched her face and vowed to burn the world for her. This is a test, she realized. He's watching how I respond. Or maybe it wasn't a test. Maybe he believed Seraphina. Maybe the tender moments had been her imagination, and she was just a fool who had dreamed too big. Either way, she would not grovel. I did not know who you were, Ren said, her voice clear despite her fear. When I found you in the forest, you were a wounded stranger. I helped you because you were suffering, not because I expected anything in return. Convenient words, Seraphina sneered. I have no proof, Ren continued, ignoring her. I have no noble witnesses, no signed documents, and no powerful family to vouch for my character. All I have is the truth. She met Corvin's eyes. I saw a man in pain, and I chose compassion over self-preservation. If that makes me a fraud, then condemn me. But I will not confess to a lie to save myself. Silence hung in the air. Corvin stood. The entire room tensed. He descended from the throne, his boots echoing on the marble, and stopped directly in front of Ren. His storm-gray eyes searched her face. Seraphina, he said, without looking away from Ren. Where did you obtain this letter from Marina? I traveled to Silverpine and... You arrived at this citadel less than 12 hours after we did. Corvin's voice was soft, dangerous. Silverpine is a 3-day journey. How did you acquire a signed confession in that time? Seraphina's composure cracked. I sent a messenger ahead. A messenger who returned with a signed document before you even departed? Corvin turned now, and his gaze was a blade. You forged this letter. You fabricated evidence to destroy an innocent woman because your pride could not accept that a king chose someone other than you. No, Your Majesty, Guards. Corvin's voice was ice. Seize her. Two armored figures stepped forward, gripping Seraphina's arms. She struggled, her face contorted with fury. You can't do this. My father is head beta of Silverpine. This is an outrage. Your father's rank means nothing in my kingdom. Corvin returned to the throne but remained standing. Seraphina Crest, you are charged with forgery, slander against the crown's chosen mate, and contempt of royal authority. You will be held in the Eastern Tower until your trial. As the guards dragged her away, Seraphina's eyes locked onto Ren with pure hatred. This isn't over, she hissed. You think you've won? You're nothing. A wolf-less ghost playing dress-up. When the Umbral Covenant learns what you are, they'll tear you apart, and I'll be there to watch. The doors slammed shut behind her. The throne room buzzed with shocked whispers, but Ren barely heard them. Her mind was stuck on 3 words. Umbral Covenant, the faction that had hunted the Lunaris bloodline to extinction. Corvin stepped down from the dais and took her hand. His mask had fallen away, replaced by concern. Breathe, he murmured. You did well. She knows, Ren whispered. About my bloodline. She knows, and she's going to tell them. Corvin's jaw tightened. Then we need to accelerate your training. Your power must awaken before they come. And if it doesn't? He squeezed her hand. Then I will stand between you and every wolf in the 7 realms. His eyes burned with fierce promise. You are not alone anymore, Ren. Whatever comes, we face it together. But even as his words warmed her, a cold wind seemed to blow through the throne room. The storm was coming, and Ren wasn't sure she was ready to survive it. 3 weeks passed in a blur of training and transformation. Corvin had assembled the finest teachers in the 7 realms, combat masters, historians, wolf speakers who specialized in awakening dormant beasts. Ren trained from dawn until her muscles screamed, studying the history of her bloodline by candlelight until the words blurred. Her wolf remained silent, but something was stirring. She felt it in moments of high emotion, a heat in her chest, a pressure behind her eyes, a shadow moving just beneath the surface of her consciousness. The pendant pulsed against her skin, growing warmer each day. You're close, Corvin told her one evening, watching her practice combat forms in the training yard. I can sense her. Your wolf is pushing against the seal. Then why won't she break through? Ren's frustration boiled over. She threw her practice sword to the ground. Everyone expects me to be this legendary figure, but I can't even shift. I'm still the same broken Omega I was in Silverpine. Corvin caught her wrist before she could storm away. You are not broken. His grip was firm but gentle. The seal was placed by powerful magic to save your life. It will not shatter from training drills. It will break when the moment demands it, when your wolf has no choice but to emerge. And if that moment never comes, it will. His certainty was absolute. I have faith in you, Ren. It's time you had faith in yourself. She wanted to believe him. Goddess, she wanted to. But doubt was a familiar companion, and it whispered louder than hope. The attack came on the eve of the winter solstice. Ren woke to screams. She bolted upright, heart pounding. Through her window she saw fire. Orange flames licking the outer walls of the citadel, dark shapes pouring through a breach in the eastern gate. The door burst open. A guard, bloodied and pale, staggered in. My lady, you must hide. The Umbral Covenant. They've breached the citadel. An arrow took him through the throat. He collapsed, and behind him stood a figure in black robes, face hidden behind a mask of polished bone. Found you, the figure rasped. Ren didn't think. She grabbed the practice sword from beside her bed and swung. The blade connected with the assassin's arm, drawing blood. He snarled and lunged, but Ren was already moving, weeks of training taking over. She ducked under his strike, drove her elbow into his ribs and ran. The corridors were chaos. Servants fled screaming. Guards clashed with robed invaders. The smell of smoke and blood choked the air. Ren ran toward the throne room, toward Corvin. She found him in the Great Hall, fighting back-to-back with his Onyx Guard against a tide of Covenant soldiers. He moved like death incarnate, his sword carving through enemies with brutal efficiency. But there were too many. "Corvin!" He turned at her voice, and in that moment of distraction, an arrow flew toward his exposed back. "No!" Ren didn't think. She threw herself forward, hands outstretched, as if she could somehow stop the projectile with sheer will. And something inside her exploded. A wave of silver light erupted from her palms. It struck the arrow mid-flight, disintegrating it instantly, then expanded outward in a shockwave that threw every Covenant soldier off their feet. Ren collapsed to her knees, gasping. The pendant around her neck was blazing, the white stone burning like a captured star. And in her mind, finally, beautifully, a voice spoke. "I am here." It was ancient. It was powerful. It was hers. Ren threw back her head and screamed, but the sound that emerged was a howl. Her bones cracked, her skin rippled. Silver light consumed her vision. When she opened her eyes again, she was standing on 4 legs. Her fur was the color of moonlight on fresh snow. Her eyes glowed like twin moons. She was smaller than Corvin's wolf form, but the power radiating from her made the air itself tremble. The Lunaris wolf had awakened. The remaining Covenant soldiers froze, staring at the creature that had emerged from the slight woman they had come to kill. Corvin shifted beside her, his wolf form massive and black as midnight. He pressed his flank against hers, not in dominance, but in partnership. Together, his voice echoed in her mind through the mate bond. Together, she agreed. They attacked. The battle was swift and brutal. The Covenant soldiers, prepared to face a dormant Omega and a distracted King, were utterly unprepared for 2 apex predators fighting in perfect synchrony. Ren moved on instinct, her wolf guiding her, centuries of ancestral knowledge flowing through her veins. When the last enemy fell, silence descended on the Great Hall. Ren shifted back, collapsing against a pillar, her body trembling with exhaustion. Corvin was beside her instantly, wrapping his coat around her naked form. "You did it," he breathed, awe and pride blazing in his eyes. "Ren, you were magnificent." She laughed weakly, tears streaming down her face. "I heard her, my wolf. She's been there all along, waiting for me. I told you." He pressed his forehead to hers. "I told you to have faith." But their reunion was interrupted by a slow, mocking applause. They turned. Seraphina Crest stood in the doorway of the Great Hall, flanked by 3 robed figures. But she had changed. Her eyes were black, completely black, and dark veins crawled up her neck like vines of corruption. "Beautiful," Seraphina said, her voice echoing with unnatural resonance. The little ghost finally found her bark. "But you're too late." "Seraphina." Corvin rose, placing himself between her and Ren. "How did you escape the tower?" "Escape?" Seraphina laughed, the sound fractured and wrong. "I was never your prisoner, Your Majesty. I was your distraction." She raised her hand, and the robed figures behind her pulled back their hoods. Ren's blood froze. They were Covenant high priests, but worse than that, one of them held a struggling figure in his grip. Old Marina. "No," Ren whispered. "The healer was easy to find," Seraphina said casually. "She knows so much about you, Ren, about your parents, about the night Hollow's end burned." Her black eyes glittered. "Did you know your mother was the one who placed the seal on your wolf? She used her own life force to hide you, touching really, and utterly pointless." "Let her go," Corvin commanded, his voice shaking with barely restrained fury. "Oh, I will." Seraphina smiled, a terrible thing on her corrupted face. After Ren comes with us. The Covenant has waited 3 centuries to extinguish the Lunaris bloodline. We're not leaving without our prize. She snapped her fingers. One of the priests pressed a blade to Marina's throat. Choose, little wolf, Seraphina said sweetly. Your freedom or her life. You have 10 seconds. Ren looked at Corvin. She looked at Marina, the woman who had raised her, fed her, given her the only home she had ever known. There was no choice. I'll go, Ren said. Ren, no. Corvin grabbed her arm. I won't let her die for me. Ren pulled free, tears burning her eyes. I won't. She walked toward Seraphina, each step heavier than the last. But as she reached the doorway, Marina spoke. Child. The old healer's voice was calm, steady. Your mother's last words, do you remember them? Ren frowned. I don't. She whispered them as she sealed your wolf. I heard them. I've kept them all these years. Marina smiled, even with the blade at her throat. The moon never abandons her daughters. Then, before anyone could react, Marina grabbed the priest's blade and drove it into her own chest. No! Ren screamed, and the world turned white. The power that erupted from Ren was not a wave. It was a cataclysm. Silver fire exploded outward, consuming everything in its path. The 3 Covenant priests disintegrated before they could scream. The walls of the great hall cracked. The chandeliers shattered, raining crystal like frozen tears. Seraphina was thrown backward, her corrupted body slamming against a pillar. She shrieked, the black veins on her skin smoking where the silver light touched them. But Ren didn't stop. She couldn't. The grief was too vast, the rage too absolute. Marina, her guardian, her only family, was gone, sacrificed to protect her. Release, her wolf howled. Release it all. Ren's human form dissolved. The silver wolf emerged, but this time she was different. Larger, brighter. Her fur blazed with inner light, and her eyes were no longer gold. They were pure white, burning with the essence of the moon itself. She was no longer just a Lunaris wolf. She was the avatar of the moon goddess. Corvin, a voice echoed in her mind, her wolf, ancient and wise. He cannot withstand this light, shield him. With the last thread of her control, Ren turned her power inward, creating a bubble of protection around Corvin and his surviving guards. Then she unleashed everything. The silver fire became a pillar, shooting upward through the citadel's roof, piercing the night sky. It was visible for 100 miles, a beacon of divine wrath that turned night into day. The Covenant soldiers outside the walls dropped to the ground, screaming as the light burned the corruption from their souls. Those too far gone simply crumbled to ash. Seraphina crawled toward the door, her body smoking, her black eyes flickering. This isn't possible, she gasped. The bloodline was supposed to be weak, diluted. The silver wolf advanced on her, each paw leaving scorch marks on the marble. You hunted my ancestors, Ren's voice echoed, no longer just hers but layered with countless others, the voices of every Lunaris wolf who had come before. You burned our temples, you slaughtered our children, you thought you had won. She stood over Seraphina, her massive head lowering until her blazing eyes were inches from the corrupted Omega's face. You were wrong. Please. Seraphina sobbed, all her cruelty stripped away, leaving only a terrified girl who had chosen the wrong side. Please, I didn't know. I just wanted to matter. You wanted power. The wolf's voice was cold. Now witness true power. Ren opened her jaws. Seraphina screamed. And then, Ren closed her mouth. She stepped back. Death is too easy for you, Ren said. You will live. You will remember. And every day you will know that the wolf-less ghost you mocked now holds your fate in her claws. She turned away, the silver light slowly fading. Behind her, Seraphina collapsed, weeping, broken in a way no healer could mend. The battle was over. When Ren shifted back, she fell immediately. The power had drained everything every reserve, every spark of energy. But Corvin caught her. He always caught her. Marina, Ren whispered, tears streaming down her face. She's gone. I know. Corvin held her tight, his own voice rough with grief. I know, my love. She died protecting you. She died with purpose. It's not fair. No, it's not. He pressed his lips to her hair. But you honored her. You ended the Covenant's centuries of terror. You did what generations of Lunaris wolves could not. Ren looked up at him, exhausted, grief-stricken, but alive. What happens now? Corvin cupped her face in his hands. Now, he said, we finish what we started. Together. He kissed her. The mate bond, already strong, flared into completion. Golden light wrapped around them both, sealing them together in a way that transcended flesh and blood. When they finally pulled apart, Ren felt different, whole. The moon was setting over the ruined citadel, but in the east, the first light of dawn was breaking. A new day was beginning, and Ren Holloway, orphan, Omega, ghost, was ready to face it. 1 month later, the 7 realms gathered at the Obsidian Citadel. The repairs had been swift. Corvin had summoned craftsmen from every territory, and the Great Hall had been rebuilt grander than before. But the true transformation was not in the stone and iron. It was in the people who filled it. Ren stood before the mirror in her chambers, barely recognizing her reflection. Her gown was silver white, woven with threads of moonstone that caught the light like captured stars. Her pale hair was swept up in an elaborate arrangement, crowned with a circlet of white gold and diamonds. Around her neck hung her mother's pendant, warm against her skin. You've come far, little one, her wolf murmured. We've come far, Ren corrected. A knock at the door. It's time, my lady, a servant called. Ren took a deep breath and walked out to meet her destiny. The throne room was packed to capacity. Nobles, alphas, betas, omegas, representatives from every pack in the 7 realms stood witness. At the front, the Council of Elders waited, ancient and solemn. And on the dais, Corvin stood beside 2 thrones. 2. Ren walked down the aisle, her head high and her steps steady. She passed faces she recognized. Lords who had doubted her. Ladies who had whispered behind her back. She passed Seraphina Crest, now stripped of rank and title, standing in the back in simple gray clothing. The corruption had left its mark. Her once lustrous mahogany hair was now streaked with white, and faded dark veins crawled visibly up her neck like permanent scars. Her eyes were empty, her spirit shattered beyond repair. Their gazes met for a single moment. Ren said nothing. She didn't need to. She climbed the dais and took her place beside Corvin. The eldest of the council stepped forward, carrying 2 crowns on a velvet cushion. Corvin Ashvale, the elder intoned, do you accept this woman as your mate, your queen, your equal in all things? I do, Corvin said, his voice ringing with conviction. Now and for all the days of my life. Ren Holloway, last daughter of the Lunaris line, do you accept this man as your mate, your king, your equal in all things? Ren looked at Corvin, at the scarred rogue who had knelt in the dirt before her, at the king who had seen her when no one else would. I do, she said. Now and for all the days of my life. The crowns were placed upon their heads. Rise, the elder commanded the assembly. Rise and greet your king and queen. The crowd rose. The cheers were deafening. But Ren only heard one voice. I love you, Corvin murmured, his hand finding hers. I love you too, she whispered back. The wolfless ghost and the disguised king, the Omega who had nothing, and the Alpha who gave up everything. They had found each other in the mud and the blood and the darkness, and now they would rule the 7 realms together. The moon never abandons her daughters. Marina's words echoed in Ren's heart as she looked out at her new kingdom. For the first time in her life, Ren Holloway was exactly where she belonged, If you loved this story and want more tales of hidden kings, triumphant omegas, and fated mates, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new story. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next one.